everything is political. There is no escaping theory. Let's consider the first statement. Just as politics and IR are sister disciplines with large areas of overlap and synergy, which means that we cannot draw hard and fast boundaries between them, so too is it difficult to draw boundaries delineating the issues, events, or things that are political and those that are not, that are apolitical. The science of climate change? Political. Quantum computing? Political. The production and dissemination of popular cultural texts, for example movies, TV shows, and music? Cultural and political. This means that what we study in politics and IR is limited only by the definitions, assumptions, and representations that we, you, me, us, and them, impose and apply. This means that how we represent what gets included in our definitions of the boundaries of politics and IR is arbitrary, open to contestation, and political in and of itself. Studying politics and IR is political. Let's call it the politics of studying politics and IR. Or perhaps the politics of politics, which is so matter. We therefore must be aware of the importance of how we describe and represent the disciplines and of the language and discourses that we use to do so. Everyone has a particular perspective, a perspective that is always partial. That includes the perspectives of the teaching staff in this course. For example, some people like to package their depictions of the disciplines of politics and IR into neat theoretical and conceptual boxes and draw hard boundaries around what falls within the study of politics and IR and what does not. Politics in this view consists of a series of discrete packages or boxes representing a particular theoretical approach, an ism, such as realism, liberalism, or feminism. Scholars can pick a box up off the shelf and apply the theory contained within to a specific set of issues, events, or problems that interest them and which can properly be situated within politics and IR. My own take on politics and IR before commencing my undergraduate studies was quite similar to this. I was focused on what I thought were the relevant empirical issues. I commenced my undergraduate studies in 2002, when issues like 9/11, terrorism, humanitarian intervention, and US foreign policy in the Middle East occupied large amounts of attention. This was the very stuff of politics and IR, and I had a very clear idea of what was within and what was outside of these disciplines. Along the way, that changed. Not immediately, mind you, but over a long period of time. Eventually, like others, I came to realize that defining the boundaries of politics and IR is a little more complex and complicated than this. That everything is in fact political. Today I prefer to think of politics and IR not as a series of discrete boxes or contained fields of scholarly inquiry, but rather as complex networks or webs, if you will, of different theories, concepts, and areas of empirical or real-world focus that intersect with one another in complex, multifaceted ways. For me, politics and IR don't really have boundaries. To put this another way, the only boundary that makes any sense to me is that between planet Earth and the rest of the universe. For Earth is where human beings reside, and if human beings are around, then so too is politics. You are political actors. You were before you entered this course, and you will continue to be after you leave it. We are also constantly theorizing about politics and IR, for just as everything is political, so too is everything theoretical. We employ theory all of the time, even if we might not be consciously aware of it. Theories are maps or lenses through which we view the world. They are constellations of concepts and assumptions that help us make sense of the world around us. Theory is a particular perspective on the world. This means that as soon as we bring our own unique individual perspectives to bear on the world around us, we are theorizing. Theory is an everyday practice, as ubiquitous as politics itself. You are already theorists. In this course and others in politics and IR, we are simply introducing you to a specific group of theories that are employed in these disciplines. There is no escaping theory when doing politics and international relations, a point that the textbook makes explicitly. Not only are the theories that we will consider throughout the course central to doing political analysis, they are also an integral aspect of the intellectual foundations and history of politics and IR. On this note, let's step away from these broader discussions about the nature and extent of the disciplines of politics and IR and consider how they came to be. One of the key things I learned in my first year as an undergrad was not just the importance of concepts and theories to doing politics and IR, but also this extensive historical lineage of both disciplines. Hobbes, for example, whose work we shall explore when we look at states, worked during the 17th century. Realists trace the origins of their theory all the way to ancient Greece and Thucydides, also including people such as Hobbes and Machiavelli as key thinkers that first articulated and shaped a realist view of the world, a world of war, violence, and unceasing competition between states. So many other key philosophers and jurists in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries are still regarded as integral to the intellectual heritage and foundations of politics and IR today. Locke, Kant, Grotius, Vattel, Bodin, Rousseau. While many date the founding of the discipline of politics to the 19th century and the founding of the discipline of IR to the end of World War I, both have a longer intellectual ancestry. The stories that we tell about our disciplines are therefore important. If we look at IR, for example, there is a specific story about the beginnings of the discipline. It was created at the end of World War I to address the problem of war and stop it from occurring again. The early years of the discipline were characterized by the first of several great debates between rival theoretical, methodological, and epistemological perspectives. This was a debate between realism and liberalism. But as I have just highlighted, theorizing in politics and IR commenced well before this, and we must be able to critically interrogate the stories and narratives that are promoted about the content, character, boundaries, and history of these disciplines. Because as I mentioned at the outset, they are all reflective of particular perspectives and contestable representations of politics and IR, usually those of white, Western, or European men. Power, and particular forms of power relations, flow from these stories and the representations that inform them. If power is at least partly about influence, about having the authority and the means to shape structures within which people operate and set agendas that people are obliged to follow, then promoting a particular story about where the disciplines of politics and IR came from, what they are about, and what it means to do political analysis, is a claim to a specific form of power relationship. This is one in which those advancing these stories claim and hold the power to ultimately determine what it means to be a student of politics and IR. This is precisely why we must not take anything for granted, but instead critically question and interrogate not only the content of the narratives and stories that are told about politics and IR, but also who tells those stories and why. For power is not only a central subject of the scholarly study of politics and IR, it is also a feature of it.